Rebecca Esme. I'm a local attorney here in Princeton, primarily business and entrepreneur visas. My question is, I guess perhaps to be addressed to David. Economics drives a lot of our concerns about immigration, rightly or wrongly. And we have Trenton right nearby. New Jersey has no regional center. New York has been awesome in getting regional centers. Kudos to you. Are we addressing, and of course you're not from New Jersey, but do you have any explanation for why we have not put a regional center in New Jersey and perhaps Trenton, or any suggestions in luring entrepreneurs and bringing money in to New Jersey?
I mean, when you look at the variation across metropolitan areas in terms of those that are more forward-looking and have made more progress on these issues versus places that have not, it really comes down to local leadership. And obviously in New York, Mayor Bloomberg has put a high priority on various aspects of immigration reform. It's been a top priority. When you get local political leaders assembling resources and building coalitions and exercising leadership, then you're going to get those types of results. In other communities that either don't have the infrastructure, don't have the resources, or don't have the local political leadership, then typically they're going to lag the innovation curve.
I think one thing is New Jersey, in a sense, had been spoiled for so long with Bell Labs and all of the major pharma companies. I mean, it's the drug capital of the country, and so. But as times are moving on and things are getting more globalized and these companies are getting out of basic R&D, we haven't adapted as well as other places, I think. And I think a lot of it is, and definitely the political leadership. New Jersey is a very fragmented place, and it's got these two gigantic cities on its border. Makes it hard.
Can I just jump in here, because I titled my talk "Embarrassment and Embarrassment of Riches" here in New Jersey, and I didn't dwell on it, but I really meant the embarrassment part. I mean, we have way more immigrant richness in this state than we kind of deserve at the present moment, given what the policy landscape looks like, and that certainly extends to economic development. So there was talk in the Corzine administration towards the end of that, and the work that Nick and others did on that Blue Ribbon panel of actually kind of bringing state policy into line with the economic needs with respect to immigrants. But that fell apart with the arrival of the Christie administration. I actually sit on that Governor's Council on, what's it called? New Americans, but it is not a thriving body. And so, this governor is no fool. He knows what side his bread is buttered on, and he meets with Indian business leaders, and here and there he makes gestures towards immigrant communities, but it's not happening in a kind of very concerted or organized or with the support of the legislature. There's much more that could be done both regionally and at the state level.
It's interesting, Governor Christie is actually coming to Brookings for a talk in a couple of weeks, so I'll ask him about that.
Yes, sir. In the blue shirt, right.
Being an immigrant and having been in extensive contact with the INS over the years, both personally and in business, I've kind of wondered, is there an overarching objective of U.S. immigration policy, and what is it?
Collect fees, that might be the main goal of the INS.
If there is, it's well hidden.
I know, Darryl?
Family reunification. Ostensibly, that's the answer. Ryan?
It is, but it's an established bureaucracy, and so bureaucrats kind of take on bureaucratic objectives, and I think that is the big problem with the whole infrastructure. I mean, certainly based on my experience, it's like the people we dealt with were looking for excuses to say no, not to say yes. They would have a checklist of like 20 items, and if you're okay on 19 of the 20, but you missed on one of them, it was a no, because they felt they could get in more trouble by allowing someone in who they shouldn't allow in, as opposed to saying yes in a more restrictive way. And then on the fee issue, the incentives for INS are screwy, in my opinion, because it's a self-funded agency. Like, they do not get taxpayer dollars by and large. Their agency is funded by the fees that they collect through the application process. And so, you know, if you want to talk about how incentives drive behavior, that creates very bad incentives.
In the back?
So I have a question about the fact of importing talent to the U.S. on the local grown talent and the impact on the process of growing local talent from primary education to secondary to university education. So if you take the route of importing talent, the need to advance your educational system and the pressure of growing in-house talent is not there anymore. Would that have a negative impact on the production system of talent?
I could just see in local schools here, we have many programs to bring people to the campus or to the plasma lab. And I think you can really tell that a large fraction of those who come are the children of immigrants. And so I think which is sort of going back to the way things used to be. So I have some hope in that direction. Well, hopefully they will see that these people are working hard and getting good jobs, and I would think that would hopefully rub off.
This is obviously very anecdotal, but the field that we work in, power electronics for renewable energy, 10 years ago there was really almost no industry in the United States doing this work. So we relied heavily on people that were trained in India and China and other places where there were higher education programs for the type of work that we did. And since that time, there is a lot more activity now in the U.S. Princeton has the Anliger Energy Center being built, so we see in the near future a much bigger base of homegrown talent that I think will exist only because that industry has gotten a foothold in the U.S. So I think largely the early companies were primarily based on talent from other places because there were higher education programs there, but now within the next couple of years we should have much more talent available here.
But I think actually, when I think more about your question, the quality of the teachers in science and engineering and mathematics at the elementary and middle school is really weaker than in most countries, and because the incentives and the pay and everything are just not there. And so to me, if you've got to start there, or that'll be a big help.
Yes.
You know, another issue that we face as a nation, and it's a global crisis, is a demographic one. And throughout the world, there are plummeting birth rates. And even in places like India and Mexico, we used to rely on Mexico as a source of unskilled labor. Well, guess what? That source may dry up in the future. And it used to be that our birth rate, at least in comparison to other Western European countries, was fairly respectable. But we're now moving down to replacement rate in terms of our birth rate. So we may find ourselves in the situation of many European countries where they simply cannot rely on their domestic labor pool and neighborhood labor pool to satisfy their needs. So this whole issue of population and demographics is very, very important.
All right. Quick questions. Two of you.
I've got two quick ones. Yes. Mine will be short as well. Michael Rodriguez, I teach politics at Richard Stockton College, not too far away from here. My question deals with the shift in the Obama administration from workplace raise to immigration audits, and how much of an obstacle that is for businesses, not knowing whether they'll get hit with an audit. And this happens, and apparently about 25 companies in New Jersey have been audited. It happened very quickly. Oftentimes they summarily dismiss the employees, and it just sort of seems like a quiet way of disrupting, but otherwise it would be a workforce that took a long time to develop. And what kind of obstacles do you folks see that for businesses, especially smaller businesses?
I guess a large part about the whole issue is it's just another piece of risk or perceived risk that you wish you didn't have to deal with. So we always want to do everything the right way, but you find yourself caught in these little situations where we filed an application based on one address and we had no idea we were going to move, but 9 months later we're at a different location, and if somebody came to audit us within the next couple of weeks, all of a sudden we're in violation and who knows what would happen. So it just kind of keeps you up at night. It's one more thing that you have to deal with. But there's really no clear, efficient way to do that other than to kind of cross your fingers and hope you don't get in trouble for something.
Yes, last question.
Paul Feldman with the Global Talent Bridge Initiative at World Education Services. I'm very impressed that this discussion has reached beyond simply talking about visas. We work with both international students and with immigrants. And one of the things I wanted to mention and get your thoughts on are the talents of immigrants who are already here. We talked about stapling the green card or bringing in entrepreneurs. 2.7 million immigrants in the United States have bachelor's degrees or higher and are working in either unskilled jobs or unemployed or working in semi-skilled jobs. To what extent can companies like yours not only look to immigration, but to the immigrant population that is here? 90,000 in New Jersey who have bachelor's degrees, who are either unemployed or in unskilled jobs, and roughly a similar number who are in semi-skilled jobs. Are there ways that you can look to reach into what is part of that global talent pool, but that's already living here, people who came through the family unification and other means? Does anybody, you all think about that? And are there methods to reach that population that you found successful?
I wouldn't say specifically. I guess philosophically we like to think that the best way is if we had no idea whether anybody was an immigrant or not. It's just an open, this is the job we're looking for. We want the best person possible. And once we find them, there are no special hurdles, no matter what your background is, to bring them on. That's obviously not totally the case today. So we don't do anything specific for a particular group, but we certainly encounter more hurdles with different groups. So I guess just getting rid of those hurdles would be the most interesting thing for us.
Okay, I think with that, thank you to the panelists and to the audience.
Thanks, Senator. Good. Peter, and thank you.
Spectacular.
So as we come towards the close of the program, what next and where do we go from here? Einstein's Alley Immigration Employment Task Force is continuing its work. Everyone's welcome to participate. You can let me know. You can let Catherine Kish, who unfortunately is not here, know, going on to the Einstein's Alley website. There are a few of us that are here that are part of the task force. But on the national stage, things are unfolding. We see that they're unfolding in the executive branch last week with President Obama. They're happening in the judicial branch, in the Supreme Court yesterday. And there's activity in the legislature. And I'd like to invite Robert Feldstein back up to talk about that.
Yes.